Electric mopeds have been one of the fastest growing segments of the e-bike market in 2020, and I've spent the year riding more than my fair share of them. Hey everyone, Micah here with Electrek, and today I'm showing you the top 5 electric mopeds I've ridden for summer of 2020. Let's check it out. First up, we have the Onyx RCR, which is probably the creme de la creme of high power and high speed electric mopeds right now. The RCR is somehow perpetually on pre-order since the company can't seem to produce them as fast as they can sell them, despite having 2 California factories now and being in business for 2 years. But the bike is worth the wait, as it can hit nearly 60 miles per hour or 100 kilometers per hour, thanks to its 3 kilowatt continuous rear hub motor that puts out around 5.5 kilowatts of peak power. I got it up to 59 miles per hour myself, and the bike felt rock solid and stable. A big part of that is the design. The frame was created by leading modern-day moped designer Tim Seward and is based on the classic Puch frames. I even took the RCR off-roading for a bit and found the ride to be quite good for such a simple little bike. Range is super variable and will depend on whether you're scooting around town at 20 miles an hour or slicing up those canyon roads at 60. In the city at 20 miles an hour, Onyx says you'll get a maximum of 75 miles or 120 kilometers of range, but you should expect that to drop off steeply once you lay heavily on the throttle. When it comes to the RCR's pedals, they're mostly vestigial and they're there to keep the bike quasi-legal. Sure, you could pedal it, but it's not a comfortable or fun bike to pedal. Those pedals are basically just footrests for all intents and purposes. Plus, at the speeds this thing can hit, you won't be able to keep up with the pedals most of the time. In addition to being the fastest moped on this list, it's also the most expensive. There's no sale right now, so it's priced at its full MSRP of $4,149, plus shipping. And while that's pretty pricey, the fact that there's a waiting list 3 states long shows that people are still lining up to fork it over for an RCR. Next, we're going in a different direction, the humble little Radrunner from Rad Power Bikes. This cute little thing isn't particularly fast, at just 20 miles per hour, but it's a heck of a lot more affordable than the Onyx RCR, coming in at just $1,199 with free shipping. And the Radrunner is very much a different kind of bike. It's got that step-through moped-style frame, but this bike is all about utility. I mean, just look at how many accessories you can fit on this thing. Come on! I've got mine kitted out with the passenger kit that includes foot pegs and a bench seat on the rear, but then I went and added the cargo box up front, which has been great to use as a small trunk. I like it better than the rack for things that I don't want to worry about tying down in the wind. Despite the modest top speed of 20 miles an hour, it's got a great range of up to 45 miles or 72 kilometers from its 672 watt-hour battery, and the 750 watt hub motor puts out 80 newton meters of torque, making it plenty powerful for pulling passengers or tackling hills. There are a few places where Rad made compromises to keep the price down. The display is a super simple LED display that doesn't really give you much more info than the bare necessities of battery life and pedal assist mode. There's also no multi-speed transmission. Instead, the bike is a single speed. That doesn't bother me too much, since the gear ratio is actually pretty decent, and the bike is already quite pedalable. It doesn't feel awkward to pedal like a lot of electric mopeds do. All in all, the Radrunner packs a few compromises, but is mostly a big winner in my book, especially for its insanely affordable price. Next up, we're checking out the Aerial Rider D-Class, an all-wheel drive electric mini bike that has power for days. Oh man, just so much power. Those motors are 750 watt nominal hubs, but Aerial Rider has them pulling 1500 watts of peak power. Between the two of them, that means you'll hit 3 kilowatts of power during acceleration. For me, that's enough to do burnouts like a piece of cake. It's also enough for high-speed riding. I hit a maximum of 33 miles per hour or 53 kilometers per hour on the Aerial Rider D-Class. At those speeds, the front suspension helps, but the lack of rear suspension means that if you hit a good-sized bump, prepare for your rear end to part ways with the seat for a heart-stopping second. Speaking of that seat, it's one of the most comfortable electric moped seats I have ever had the pleasure of sinking into. It almost makes up for the lack of rear suspension. Almost. Up front, we've got that beautiful giant headlight matched by a rear LED taillight on the back of the battery. That battery is fairly high capacity too, at 864 watt-hours. Theoretically, that'll take you around 40 miles or 64 kilometers on a charge at average speeds, but definitely not if you're doing 30 plus miles per hour the whole time. You can extend the range a bit by pedaling, and the D-Class is actually quite comfortable to pedal. I know I said that about the Radrunner too, but believe me, a good pedaling electric moped is a rarity, and the D-Class is the last one on this list that I'd call good pedaling. Priced at $2,395, the Aerial Rider D-Class is mid-range in terms of electric moped pricing, but the bike's high top speed, ridiculously fun power level, and large capacity battery make it worth the price in my opinion. Moving on, now it's time for Super 73, perhaps one of the main brands people think of when it comes to moped-style electric bicycles. I'm actually going to cover two of their models here, which have a nice spread of specs and price. First, there's the Super 73 Z1, which is their budget model. Its price varies, but is usually in the $1,200 to $1,400 range. It packs a 900 watt peak motor and gets up to 20 miles an hour. The range is not great, at about 20 miles or 32 kilometers in optimal conditions, but in real-world conditions it gets a bit less. It's also not the best bike to pedal. In fact, it's quite awkward to pedal. This is another one you'll want to just rely on the throttle for and cruise around like a mini bike, which is basically what it is. Those wide tires make turns so much fun to lean into though, and the decently powerful motor pulls you right through and out the other end. While the Super 73 Z1 is a nice bike, if you can spring for it, then I recommend upgrading from the Z series to the S series. I've spent a good amount of time on the Super 73 S1, which has a higher power motor and gets up to 25 miles per hour. It's also a bit more comfortable to pedal, though it's still best ridden with the throttle in my opinion. Its larger 768 watt-hour battery will take you further than the Z1. Super 73 claims up to 50 miles or 80 kilometers of range, but again, that's in ideal conditions. The Super 73 S1 also gives you some other nice additions over the Z1, such as hydraulic disc brakes, which are just such a big convenience upgrade in my opinion. Right now, the Super 73 S1 is priced at $1,800 and is definitely worth the upgrade over the Z1, especially if you live in a hilly area or just want the extra range and nicer parts. Lastly, finishing up the top 5 electric mopeds I've tested for summer 2020 is the Juiced Scorpion. It's not last because it lacks anything compared to the rest of these, but rather because I needed something impressive to round out the list. And the Juiced Scorpion just screams attitude and style. Look at this thing. This is what a modern day electric moped should look like. It's got both front and rear suspension, plus a pretty decent seat. Not nearly as comfy as the Aerial Rider D-Class's seat, but still quite nice. And with the added rear suspension, the ride is very comfortable. What isn't nearly as comfortable is the pedaling. It's another bike that can be pedaled, it's fine for pedaling, but it's not amazing. I use the pedal assist a lot, but I always felt more comfortable ripping on the throttle on the Juiced Scorpion, and very few people are going to get this model as a mainly pedal assist bike. It's more for cruising in style and using for utility type trips. For that use, it's perfect, especially with that big rack on the rear that is included standard. The one area that was a bit of a bummer on the Juiced Scorpion was the power level. It's just fine, but the 750 watt motor didn't blow me away. The bike just looks so awesome that I was expecting more power. And even though the power was adequate, it just wasn't as roaring as I had hoped. But that's okay, because Juiced has you covered with a higher power version of the Scorpion, known as the Hyper Scorpion. It's about $700 more, but it gets 30 plus mile per hour speeds compared to a top end of about 25 miles per hour on the base Scorpion, and it comes with a bigger battery, mirrors, turn signals, etc. Both are great options, but the Hyper Scorpion is what you want for a really powerful ride and for going farther on a charge. But even if you want to stick with the base Scorpion, you'll definitely be cruising around town in style. Alright, that's my list of the top electric mopeds I've tried for summer 2020. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any more of Electrek's electric vehicle videos in the future. We'll be back with plenty more to see soon.